Alright, so here I am back with part 2 of my digital guitar rig in Max. I guess you can call it a video series. I'm just going to make a quick short video today because what I want to do is talk about some of the features of, or rather I should say lack of features of the positive grid bias amp that I've recently discovered, and one that it is not at all MIDI enabled. You need bias effects for that, or the bias head, which is going to be shipped later this summer, I guess. I spoke to them directly, and I got an email back from Chris from their support staff saying that it's in the pipeline, but it's not implemented yet, using MIDI specifically for positive grids bias software, although the effects software is enabled for all that stuff. He actually offered to let me switch my license since I just bought it, but I don't need to because I have a workaround since I'm using Max. So let's get just real quick here. This is just my voice recording patch, which I am metering properly now so I don't clip the whole video like I did last time. But anyway, I am going to load up Positive Grid into Max here really quickly. I'm just doing a new patcher. Open Bias Amp. Give it a sec. There we go. It's loaded into the VST, and I want to open the edit window. There it is. Okay, so I wanted to be able to control all of the dials here using MIDI or something, so that if I wanted to, I could make a fake front panel to throw into my rack or something with some knobs and use an Arduino or something and just pipe the information into Max and convert it to MIDI to control my amp within the software as though it were a real amp. Really, it's just a kind of simple looking video game controller. But without MIDI, it seems like that might not be possible. Interesting thing about the VST object in Max is that some of these outlets are actually really useful for some of the information that comes out, and I figured that's how I'd figure out how it would utilize MIDI information. Well, even after I was told that it doesn't use MIDI, I thought I'd try anyway. So what I'm going to do is make a new object called print, which will print any information that gets fed into it onto the console window here. And this fourth outlet says parameter index and value when changed, which means it should be a list of some kind. And when I come over here and play with something, I get all of these values popping up. So as far as I can tell, the first number is whichever number knob, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Master volume is 6, treble is 4. And the values I get are floating point between 0 and 1. So 0 all the way up to 1. So I thought I would take a look at that and try to put a list directly into the VST. Of course, right now I'm not even dealing with audio, just dealing with control stuff. So if I were to make a message and say 3 and 0.5, what that should do is it should adjust the middle EQ knob to half. And it did. Look at that. Let's move around again. So it does actually accept some kind of controls. I'm assuming Positive Grid probably knows about this, but it's not something that they talk about because they haven't implemented it fully. Which also means now, instead of using a message, I can use a slider, which I will change to float output with a range of 1. So all of my values coming out should be between 0 and 1. 1, 0. Perfect. I don't need that. That was just to see what's going on. I'm going to use another object called prepend. We'll say 3. What that does is it will add an element to the beginning of the messages coming down the line here. So this is going to be my floating point number between 0 and 1. I'm going to prepend the number 3 so it'll send out as a list. And now when I'm moving the slider around, it will change the knob in positive grid bias for me. So it is possible, and since this is max, this isn't strictly speaking MIDI data, it's just a list of two numbers, a parameter number and then the parameter value. I can use a MIDI controller and change it into just max logic, or just separate all the MIDI data so I can plug it into there directly with just the values. I can also use Open Sound Control and use a custom layout in, let's say, TouchOSC by Hexler. If you don't know that app, it's definitely worth playing around with, whether you have iOS or Android. You can even make custom layouts for it in either Macintosh or Windows for the iOS or the Android version. Excuse me. My temperature gauge is beeping at me because I turned the fans off so we didn't hear in the microphone. Anyway, so you can do this with any number of the parameters. I'm going to switch this to 6 for master volume. And as I turn it, the master volume changes. And it even spits the values back out because I still have this print object attached. And anytime it changes, the values get pumped back out. So that's pretty great. The other issue is, now that this is all solved, is that I have literally no way of switching my amps, because I can't seem to send any information to or get any information out of positive grid's bias when I switch amps. And I'm going to want to be able to switch amps as though I'm switching channels on my my foot controller. So what I'm going to do instead, since that is something you could do with bias effects, and I don't have the money to buy it, and I don't want to trade in all of the customization in amp for it, the simple thing to do is just go like this and instantiate bias amp, I should say. So there's what I've been working on. Here's the first one. Let's say I want to turn this into my dirty channel, so I'm going to go with, positive insane. And then this one is going to be my clean channel. Oh, maybe I still have to pick, here we go. And then open. There we go. I've instantiated bias amp. Now I have two copies running, or two instances running simultaneously in the same host. Same thing you might do for two different channels in your DAW. Now I'm going to run a blackface. So there we go. This one's a blackface. This one's the insane. And I'm gonna take my audio out or into it. I'm not gonna bother with it in this video. Work out some max logic, do some switching so that my guitar signal will go into one or the other, and then make that switchable in the same way I can switch anything else in max by taking MIDI data in from a controller or something that I build. And it doesn't matter that the bias amp doesn't have the MIDI functionality. I can make it happen in max, which is another reason why I like using it so much. It does take a bit of extra power, processing power, because now I have an extra instance of bias amp, but it shouldn't be too bad. I mean, it's designed to instance this way anyway if you're running multiple guitar tracks in a recording like a Pro Tools or Cubase session, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I was going to do the same thing to make a stereo amp setup the way they do it in effects, in bias effects, that you can't do just with bias amp alone. But I mean, doing exactly what I did here, you can do it again. I could even do two sets of stereos so that I've got stereo clean, stereo dirty, and I won't get into it. I think you can use your imagination to figure it out. So even though some of these features are not available in Bias Amp, if you've got a program like Max, you can make it happen anyway. And yeah, that's it. Awesome. Talk to you later.